Hi everybody, Dana Litwin here again, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. This week, talking about, is volunteering patriotic? That answer depends on who you ask and where you are and how you define that word. So I'm going to define how I'm using the word patriotic. I'm using it in its original definition, which is wanting to support your country. I am not using the word the way it has most often been associated, at least in the USA, with nationalism and far-right extremist groups and violence, militias, hate groups, things like that. So that's an unfortunate appropriation that far-right groups have taken of the word patriot or patriotic, but I'm going to go back to the OG, to the founding fathers and their work with volunteerism and defining the word as really community care, what we would call community care in modern language today. So founding father Benjamin Franklin, here's a fun fact if you didn't know this, organized the first volunteer fire company in Philadelphia in 1736. And since then, in the USA, volunteering has been as definitively American as Girl Scout cookies, apple pie, blood donation, and school bake sales. There's also writing from the French aristocrat and political scientist Alexis de Tocqueville, who marveled at how many, quote, Americans make great and real sacrifices to the public welfare in his 1840 book, Democracy in America. So for hundreds of years, we've associated democracy and patriotism with volunteering and taking care of each other and our neighbors. Alexis de Tocqueville goes on to say, they hardly ever failed to lend faithful support to each other. He marveled at the Americans. Men attend to the interests of the public, first by necessity, afterwards by choice. And that's our usual definition of volunteering, is doing something to support a cause, a mission, an organization, a person, other people, by your own choice. We also have some interesting kind of statistics and research and quotes coming from larger international volunteer organizations like Rotary Club. So Rotary International, they're seeing a strongest volunteer growth not in the United States in the past few years, but in Asia, Africa, and parts of Eastern Europe, according to their CEO, John Hocko. But these organizations and even many faith groups doing volunteering around the world are also very closely associated with systems of colonialism and harm and impacts that they've had to indigenous and native communities. So it's always a balance of what kind of volunteerism are we doing, who's doing it, and who's in charge. Which leads me to my next patriotic point, that top-down management strategies, or this kind of militaristic, hierarchical type of structure that many current nonprofits and especially government agencies use for their volunteer management systems and programs, those aren't really well received by younger volunteers. So even younger millennials or Gen Z or Gen Alpha as they're aging into maybe some youth or teen activities. According to the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, they have had success with volunteer engagement with a really different philosophy than that kind of top-down hierarchy. Their CEO says, we have youth volunteers in 165 countries because we're asking them, the volunteers, what projects are you seeing in your neighborhood that will have the most impact? How can we help you solve your own problems? How can we help amplify your ideas? And so that approach is bottom up. They're providing them with funding, with agency in the freedom sense of the word, with resources, with mentorship to make their own ideas as volunteers in their communities come to life. You also in Canada here can associate the word patriotic, well, I guess in all countries, it's associated with veteran organizations, and there's some interesting initiatives happening here in Canada trying to organize veterans as volunteers in a nationwide effort that's really the first coordination of its kind happening, and I'll link to the group doing that below. So that's kind of interesting. I'm going to watch and see how that plays out, if that is successful in kind of gathering veterans as volunteers in a patriotic effort in that definition of it. There are these ideas of volunteer engagement and patriotism and loving your country and wanting to do good by it with community care. Those are increasingly a kind of cross-generational and geographic boundaries as far as those ideas and these types of successful volunteer engagements. And I personally being in this business for over 20 years, I'm really unsurprised that volunteerism growth is happening around the world in this way. Sustainable Oceans Alliance continues to say, we are definitely moving from a US-centered approach. We are starting to shift the narrative that we have to wait for politicians to make the right decision. Young people are going to demand that these changes are made because they are aware that if they are not made, there is going to be consequences in their lifetimes. I think direct community support, volunteerism is very, very patriotic. It's helping each other to thrive no matter what the background or language or faith system that someone is coming from, and it's one of the best ways that we can get people to understand each other and build empathy and see the humanity in each other, and to just also feel good physically and mentally knowing that they are doing good versus feeling powerless or helpless in the face of so many crises, both the climate crises, different political crises around the world, economic crises. So I think volunteering is very patriotic to support wherever you are, whether or not you agree with your government representatives. I'm also going to do a part 2 about when volunteering causes harm next week, so I hope you tune in to that. And there are volunteers all across political spectrums, faith spectrums, on all sides of these issues and challenges that we have to meet together. I think we all, as leaders of volunteers, should attend to the public by necessity, especially when our own governments fail at it. So I hope you have a great holiday weekend if you're celebrating, and look for more Tuesday tips. See you next week.